year of our Lord 2025, why are there still games, and they are on BGG, that don't have any either designer credits or artist credits? It's just anonymous. And I don't know, like, I kind of understand it if it's a game from the past, from the before times, where, you know, maybe I don't really understand that. I don't understand where that has come from.
It could have been lost to time.
Right, so that could have been lost to time. But why are there still games now? Are they because they're from like a publishing house that...
Yeah, so Hasbro does not list its designers because Hasbro does not want to associate anyone's name with their work. It just wants to be a uni-blob called Hasbro. Just one big blob of cardboard. I was gonna say something fecal in there, you know, but I stopped myself.
Yeah, I just don't get that why, like, imagine if a song came out and you're like, oh, I really like this song, but you had no idea who the performer was or the writer of the song. Like,
by MTV.
Yeah, by MTV. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be weird?
It would be weird.
And yet, for some reason, it still happens in board games. Welcome to the Talk Cardboard podcast, a podcast about board games and everything adjacent, with me, Elaine, and you...
Not at all political, Efka.
On this episode, we will be talking about Ascending Empires Zenith Edition.
Zenith?
Zenith.
Zenith.
Because it's spelled Zenith.
Zed-nith Edition.
Zed-nith Edition. But first...
It's our work in progress, which is just some games that we're playing. So we played more Eternal Decks.
We did.
And that was a lot of fun. I had a good time again. The aim for me was to actually have a non-two-player game played this week, but I failed at that. I pitched the game twice, and both times, once it was like, I just don't play cooperative games. Okay, so that's a no-go. We're not playing Eternal Decks. And the second time, I pitched Eternal Decks. There was a person who was like, "Oh, you got Joyride under the table." I'm like, yeah, I do. Yeah, forget about
anything else.
Yeah, we'll do Joyride. But so first, Eternal Decks. So we played it twice more. We didn't play the intro scenario. We played scenario A and then scenario B, and there's like 6 scenarios. C, D, E, and F are awaiting, and it was an interesting experience. So scenario A was just like, oh, here's the same thing you played, but like with slightly more rules. And I thought, oh, okay, how's this going to go for scenario B? No, it was like a complete change-up. The puzzle was entirely different. If you're not familiar with Eternal Decks, it's a co-op game of sort of like trying not to bust so everyone can keep playing cards. Think if like, you know, like this one criticism of the mind that you see constantly is, oh, this is not a game, you know?
Sorry, say that again.
This is not a game.
Oh, this is not a game. Okay.
Yeah. So I guess this is like the answer to that, where it's just like, it's the mind, but it is now definitely a game. There's chunky mechanisms and thinky parts everywhere. And it's less about like intuiting what's in your partner's hand, but more about like figuring out how do we not create failed state scenarios. So it's a lot of fun with cards and numbers. I'm having a good time. I'm sure we'll have more words on Eternal Decks in the future.
There wasn't a lot of difference between the intro scenario and scenario A, I didn't think. It didn't make a massive difference. And in fact, because I misread the rules for 2-player, we kind of played the A scenario anyway. Because
sort of. There was one edition where instead of like, there was one row that was just the camp where you could like almost play anything. It was just the standard rules. You can't play like color next to like color and like number next to like number, right? And so here it was more advanced in that you had an extra condition.
Right, yeah, sure.
And that kind of made the puzzle fuller, I think. It felt like this place had purpose now, rather than just like, oh, I guess it's just like this random spot where you can just dump cards.
Scenario B, though, did change things quite a lot, because rather than collecting stones, we were collecting little keys to free the Eternals. And we got a bit stuck on it because the way that it's written in the rulebook is that it doesn't quite make sense for us linguistically. And I said to you, like, this is what happens when two people that like linguistics read a rule book, because we were puzzling over this thing. And then we were like, oh, it's this. Okay, never mind.
Listen, I'm going to be candid. That rule book is bad. There is a video tutorial done by this person whose name, I'm so sorry, I cannot recall, but I will put a link in the description for anyone who snagged a copy of Eternal Decks. Every scenario is explained thoroughly. All the rules, kind of like things that you might have questions for, are answered. I was very grateful for that video because it made scenario B make sense. So thank you to whoever that is. You've done an excellent job. I'm sorry I forgot your name, but I will share the video in the description so that people can learn it as well. Yeah, thank you for good video tutorials, I guess. Sometimes they're necessary, especially in a game that is all about like limited communication. Mm-hmm. And that's the moment where you don't want like rules questions to kind of interrupt gameplay. Yeah. You want everyone to be kind of like on the same page so it doesn't like mess up the game. So yeah, rulebook bad, video good.
One more thing about Eternal Decks before we move on. The game does have red, blue, green and yellow in it. And I don't know how unplayable or playable this game is if you have colour vision difference. I've not heard anyone who has colour vision difference talk about this game or say whether it's important, because there are symbols in the game, but I don't think the symbols correlate with the colours in any way. So
one thing to note is that this game is notoriously unavailable because there was one Kickstarter, it did not go to retail, and it was from an indie publisher. However, it has already been picked up by Portland Games Collective, which is the publisher that did the new version of Haggis and others. And they are doing their own edition. So I don't know.
Potential for change.
There is definitely potential for change. And I think the red-green thing should definitely go because, yeah, that's...
Because we don't need house colours like we're in school. I was in green, by the way.
Sure, too. No, sure, too? Sure, that too.
Tell me about your player Joyride, the game that knocked Eternal Decks off the table.
Well, not literally. I think it was just... Yeah. It was fun. I had a nice time. I introduced it to some people at a board game meetup where I literally didn't know anyone that I was playing games with, and I had no idea how this was going to go down, whether Joyride was going to be too thin or too thick, you know. I will say I have massive regrets about purchasing the Turbo Edition, because taking that thing out at a meetup and like, I have to get this map and this car and whatever. Like, if I just had the base box, it would be the 4 cars, right? You give one of each car to each person and off you go, right? And there's already plenty of stuff in the standard edition. The big meaty box made it impossible to navigate. I think I need to compartmentalize. I need to make my own insert where like every part of the insert is like associated with a booklet in that Turbo Edition. So you
that's
just take
quite smart.
Yeah, just take that out, and that's everything associated with this one.
Like when you put the player pieces together with the starting resources in a game, in a little baggie, so that you're ready to go. That's not going to help though with the fact that you took up a whole extra tram seat, you know, for all the games that you had with you.
I did. I had so much games, and in fact, I realized that I need to buy one of those board game bags because I'm carrying a lot more games into the city. We don't live in Nottingham City. We live like in the suburbs or whatever, and Yeah, I have to take the tram with a bunch of board games. And I guess what's nice is that I'm going at a time when the tram is not busy.
Hmm.
So it doesn't matter that I'm taking up an extra seat with a whole bunch of board games. But I feel like very conspicuous because it's just like, here's a middle-aged man with a bunch of board games in a bag,
I mean, it could be
fulfilling the stereotype.
worse. It could be worse.
But yeah, Joyride was fun. Everyone internalized the rules pretty quickly. We had a lot of fun racing. One player had to go home and so dropped out after the first lap. And immediately the game took a nosedive because 3 players is nowhere near as good as 4 players. You need the full 4-player count for that game. I remember we played the 2-player version once, and I thought it was pretty fine because it created a lot of funny moments, but it's not the strongest 2-player experience for me. So Joyride remains exclusively a 4-player affair.
You need the chaos.
Yeah, you absolutely need everyone ramming into each other, because as soon as that player left, I tore ahead, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop me at all. I was just like, oh, okay, I guess I'm far enough ahead where no one can interfere with me unless someone deliberately decides not to win anymore and just like goes off piste and doesn't follow like the track progression and just, harasses me or something. Yeah, it needs the full player count. I finally played a game of Moonrakers as well. I've been meaning to try Moonrakers, and the story is a little bit the same as with Joyride because that game needs more players than free, and once again I played it with free, right? So I don't know how much my impression of it is skewed by that, but I had like some high hopes because the high concept interested me a lot. It's a deck building game that is also a negotiation game, right? So the deck building part is very simple. You just have like these sort of very standard cards, and Dominion style, you only get one card play a turn, but like there's a card that can give you extra card plays, right? And so the idea of the game is that there's a bunch of missions that require you to like play a certain amount of certain types of cards. And most of the time, like 98% of the time, those missions are not possible for one person to do. You have to like engage someone else and say, and you can split the rewards however you like, right? Like that the game like leaves that up to you. And that's where the negotiation comes in. Like, hey, can you play like these cards and then I'll play these cards, and if we play them together, you can have the coins, I'll have the victory points, or we can have one of each or whatever, something like that. I just found that there wasn't enough pushing that negotiation, and maybe that's the fault of a free player game, but I imagine that even if I played with 5, I would need something more. So I played just the base game. I know there's like free expansions for Moonrakers, and some of them kind of address that in certain ways where there's like extra incentives for people to kind of go into negotiations, but the only incentive within the game is that like, oh, you want to be part of it because it makes sense, right? You want to be in negotiations.
Yes.
But okay, but so that's flat for everyone, right? That's like a flat thing. Everyone is encouraged to be in negotiations, right? Okay, right? But there's nothing to sort of salt it. There's nothing to kind of make those negotiations more tense or interesting. It's just like, oh, well, how do you want to split this? I guess we can split it like this. Oh, I don't want to split it like... I don't know. There was something missing in that,
I don't know how much I would enjoy that, because in games with negotiation where it's encouraged to negotiate, but everyone is kind of talking over each other, like Quo Vadis or even Sidereal Confluence to a point, like sometimes I get a bit overwhelmed with all the conversations going on, and then I don't ever get the thing that I want or need.
You definitely need a bit of brashness, right?
Yeah.
And it's very much a vibe thing. I also played it, again, I played it with strangers. So everyone was kind of like a little bit like their best self. They didn't...
Coy.
Well, they were, right?
Yeah.
They didn't want to be like like a little cheeky.
That's nice, though, I think.
I mean,
For
it is
first,
nice.
when you don't know the group,
Absolutely,
to be a bit
right?
more like that.
So, but also, I guess I was looking for a bit more zing and a bit more bite. So it wasn't a perfect environment. It wasn't a perfect player count. And I'm kind of looking forward to trying Moonrakers again, where there's a little bit of a more kind of, I don't know, getting up in each other's grits.
While you were away playing all those interesting board games, you know what I was playing?
Go on.
I was playing games such as fan favourite robot tied to a sock and hide treats in an old tea towel. That's what I was playing because I was looking after the pups.
How would you rate these on BGG out of 10?
I don't think I'm the target audience, but I think the dogs loved them.
So what, like a 7 or
maybe?
Yeah, okay.
We have a correspondence.
Hey!
We've had some correspondence. This one is from Munter. They start by saying lots of lovely things in their email, so thank you for that. But then they get to their question, which is, how do you pick which of your old favourites, new hotness to play with friends or in game groups or cafes? Surgically removing half of your 236 games was incredibly mature but also painful to watch when you got to the last 10 or 20. There must be a kind of nostalgic grief going on sometimes where you realise that you will probably never get to play certain games with the right people again. Games that hold really special memories that were and still are immensely enjoyable and exciting because, heck, there's just so many boxes singing siren songs at the same time. They then go on to explain that a little bit more and what they meant. But I think, do you understand the question?
Yeah. Like, how do you not just curate your collection, but how do you like curate your collection in relationship to like the games that you want to bring out to people? And
yeah, and they say, is there a top 10 or 20 that you keep coming back to time and time again?
Well, no, because the nature of the job, right? There is that where there is a sort of impetus and interest to keep up with what's cool and hot and interesting, but also, keyword being interesting. I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't excited to explore the breadth of things that people keep making, So for me, there is always an element of that. I am very much an explorer at heart. So I want to, I don't know, I just want to try new things. And so that's kind of like a weird thing, especially when you're going to more public meetups and you don't know what people you're gonna end up playing games with, whether you'll know them, whether you won't know them, what their game tastes and preferences are. So you kind of hedge your bets sometimes. So for example, like last time when I went out, I did take Joyride and Moonrakers and Eternal decks, but I also took a couple of other games that were slightly like maybe fulfilled a different remit, and I didn't tie myself to the idea of playing any of them. I'm more like, let's see what's gonna work, right? So I was hoping to play Eternal decks. I actually didn't, but any of the games I took, I was kind of happy to play with. So I guess you can sort of extrapolate that approach to your collection as well. Have a variety of things that beckon you, that make you go, ooh, and maybe sometimes don't think. I guess this is a privilege if you're not, if you're not playing games with constantly the same people, because if you are, you don't have the luxury of keeping games that your friends are not going to want to play because they're not going to want to play them, so you're never going to play them, right? But I think sometimes it's okay to have a game that you're not even ever going to get a chance to play just because it means something to you.
I mean, there is like Sidereal Confluence with you. It comes out once every 5 years, maybe, right? But
not that bad.
Well,
but
all right,
yeah.
no, but you know what I mean. Like it does not come out every couple of months.
No,
it sits on the shelf for a long time before it comes out. But you know that when it does come out, you are going to have a good time. When we get the right amount of people together, enough people together to play it, you are going to have a good time. So you keep it for that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's important to, I guess, not clog yourself up so much with like things that feel more like a necessity or a chore, and just, Marie Kondo it. Have the joy, the spark, the something, and keep that. And if it feels like a thing is weighing you down, just let go of it. You'll feel better afterwards. So we did a video recently, a couple of days ago, called "Is Every Game Really Political?" And that video was about a very silly game called Sausage Sizzle, uh, where I said in the video, it's sort of anticipating some responses, hey, there's nothing here. It's purposely silly. And then went on to extrapolate a whole bunch of political meaning.
But
Here's a comment from the game's artist, Ian O'Toole. This weekend we have a federal election in Australia. At every polling station there will be a sausage sizzle where any voter can get their democracy sausage, as they are called for the day. We've had games about manipulating electoral systems and trying to actually get elected, etc. But I'm not sure if we've had one about how it feels sometimes to be a voter. Hedging your bets in the hope that you can get fed feels pretty close these days. Art isn't pure intent, nor is it pure received experience. It's a conversation between the two. One can dominate or entirely change the perception of the other, but the two must exist to create art. It's often the changing of the received experience over time that makes art irrelevant or crystallizes it into meaning. Aretha Franklin sings Respect. The term gaslighting is popularized, and all of a sudden, the received experience alters the art fundamentally. Also, how people hang meaning over metaphor changes over time. Just look at modern interpretations of any of the universal classic monsters, old tales from folklore and myth, and you'll see how a metaphorical framework is a valuable and flexible tool for artists to talk about subjects that fall well beyond the intent of the original creator. I can see game mechanisms as similar to these metaphorical frameworks because they communicate a feeling around which you can build meaning if you so desire. I'm not going to spoil our own video and the conclusions we reach within it, but I think it is fundamentally very funny that I managed to grab everything in the kitchen sink, but what Ian intended.
Yeah.
Right? And we still arrived at the same place. Isn't that because his words are, like echo what I was trying to say with the emotion that the game creates, right? And how that emotion is inescapably political. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks again, Ian. Thanks for showing me Sausage Sizzle. Thanks for putting me on the breadcrumb trail of this, twisting maze of intertextuality and fun extrapolation. I'm also pretty certain that when we played Sausage Sizzle with Ian at Essenspiel, he did tell me about democracy sausage, and I completely forgot. Now the bells are ringing, right?
Do you know what? It seems really unfair. Like, I know that in America, some places, when you vote, give you a sticker that says, like, I voted. And in Australia, it seems you get a sausage for voting. We get squat. Like, we need to introduce something that people get at polling stations, apart from bad politicians.
Well, it seems like the democracy sausage thing is very much a community organized event,
we do have dogs at polling stations. That's a thing on polling day. Hashtag dogs at polling stations. Have you not seen that on social media?
No.
Okay. Just me.
This is brand new information. I guess a dog is a type. No, a hot dog is a type of dog, is what I was going to say.
Are we at the point where we discuss the main feature?
The Zed-nith Edition of Ascending Empires.
Tell us about the game, Efka.
I guess the reason I'm calling it the Zed-nith Edition is because of the whole through line of it being published by a company called Play to Z, which is run by Zeb Schlesinger, who is the person behind Z-Man Games, or as we would call it in England, Z-Man Games. So it's like a very extended insider baseball joke for us. But this is has all Zeb Schlesinger games. Weird and out there and kind of cool in ways that make you feel like you're playing something that you have not played before, right? I mean, it's not a game designed by Zeb Schlesinger, but it is a game signed by Zeb Schlesinger. And I feel like that often says something. Sidereal Confluence is one of them. Pandemic is another, right? So Ascending Empires is a 4X space game, and that sounds bland as balls.
However,
it's a flicking game, and that's kind of the thing, right? It was surprisingly easy to pitch this to a group of strangers in one of my plays, where I said this exact thing. I said, hey, it's a 4X space game, but
with flicking.
And just like that, that was the game we were playing, right? Because I was like, here's a whole bunch of games I brought, and that one was picked out immediately. I feel like that's a good pitch, right? And I feel like this is not going to surprise people. This is maybe the best 4X space flicking game by the virtue of being the only...
I'm not sure I know another one, yeah.
Yeah, by virtue of being the only one. It's good. It's good. I am enamored with it. I want to play more of it. We haven't played that much of it, so, cards on the table. But also at the same time, like it's such a strange thing, like it feels almost like a novelty. Like you go, oh yeah, that was good. And
because of the flicking.
I had fun. The flicking made sense. The production is nice. Everything is cohesive, and it does feel different. It does play differently, right? And I guess I'm just gonna start with this. Elaine, you hated this. You said, I hate this.
Can I just... When you say novelty, do you mean that in a negative way? Like there is a novelty to it that when you've played it 15 times is just not going to be there, and it's going to be poorer for it?
No, I don't think so. I think that there is an aspect of novelty to it because it is different, right? I think there's a lot of interesting stuff to chew on game-wise within it, right? And even after my couple of plays, I already feel like, I'm gonna do things slightly differently next time I play this because
I'm gonna use a different finger.
Yeah, well, the funny you should say that. There's definitely like that sort of tactility mastery that you can learn.
Can you? Can everyone learn that?
Well, no. When I say you can learn, I mean like there is a potential for it,
like snooker.
Yeah, like snooker, right? But also there is definitely like things within it that kind of make it strangely approachable, and also give you that depth of gameplay that you wouldn't expect from something that is kind of dressing itself up as a novelty item.
I see. No, I didn't hate it. That's not quite true. I dreaded playing it because, and for the first few turns, I was awful. I either flicked it across the room or flicked it like a millimeter. There was no in between. But I think I did get my eye in eventually because I still lost, but I didn't lose as badly as I didn't like turn the game completely upside down, like make it unplayable because I was so bad at it. So I was dreading it, but there were a lot of clever things about it. The goals that we had to get, I thought were quite fun because they added something else as rather than just having to destroy your pieces or get to the planets as fast as possible before you did. There were other things to think about, and I quite like that.
Yeah, just before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I do want to mention one more thing. One of the things that it was remarkably good at, and I think is a necessity for a flicking game, is producing moments that are very silly and very fun, right? And that's kind of like at the heart of any flicking game. And juxtaposing that with something as meaty and stodgy as like 4X Space, right?
It didn't feel stodgy though.
It did not, did it?
No.
Like, and I think that that's where it really fulfills its remit. So with all of that in mind, Ascending Empires, the brief overview of the rules. So you play on this sort of playmat, right? Like neoprene playmat. I know that there was a previous edition that didn't have a playmat and apparently didn't work because the board was like not functional for that purpose.
For flicking.
For flicking, yeah.
Well, that's why Pogs, had a playmat. Because otherwise it didn't work nicely when you chucked your kinney onto the Pogs.
So here, the basic standard version of the game comes actually with 2 playmats. So it's like one playmat but sliced in half.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of just join them up and it forms the space board. And that's perfectly, works perfectly well. And unlike other playmats, it has holes in the middle, right? And in those holes, you put these big wooden discs, which are the planets, right? And you also have another wooden disc, which is your warp zone, right? So that's kind of like your starting spot, your home base, effectively, if you think of 4X terms, where all your ships spawn and you send them out, right? And so you have these little discs, which are your little spaceships. And you flick them to the other planets. And if there's no one there, and you flick it far enough away to be in the planet's orbit. So there's like an outer ring painted on the neoprene, right? Around the hole.
Uh-huh.
And that's the orbit, right? And as long as you were like within the orbit, that counts as you being adjacent to that planet. So that's fine, right? So you try to basically flick your little ship just so it lands right in that spot where it's next to the planet, because then you can land on the planet where you take the little ship disc off and put like a little trooper miniature on. And that's like, you've colonized the place. Well done, space colonialism, and then you can start building things on that planet to then maybe build more ships and send them all out,
to make your civilization.
Yeah, to make your civilization. Yeah. Actually, mostly don't get to build ships in other places that you've colonized. You still have to like spawn them at the warp gate, which is at the very edge of the map, and then continue flicking them across the board. So that's all cool. The way the game is structured is basically on your turn, you do one of the 4 possible actions. If you do move, that's where you get to do flicking, and you get 2 flicks, right? Which is such a clever number, because it's like with 1 flick, you mess up, right? But with the second flick, you can correct yourself. However, and this is the clever part, right? If you don't mess up with the first flick, it's like you get a bonus flick, right? You get to do something else. So I like that. It's a neat little mechanism. Then with the move action, there's also a bunch of ancillary free actions inbuilt that you only get to do if you move, which is again clever. So if you moved, you can land on planets, or you can turn troopers into spaceships again, and like send them out. And
I don't think you turn them into a spaceship. They are the pilot, and now they fly the spaceship, so they're no longer on the planet. I think.
Is that important for you?
Yeah, that is important for me.
Okay.
they're not like Transformers that like they land on the planet and they're like a soldier and then they can fly up. They're not that cool.
What if they are?
What if they are?
Right?
Then this game has become a lot more cool.
Okay. So movement with a whole bunch of free actions that let you manipulate the game state in funky ways, including there's a very fun one, which is like if you so most of the planets are unexplored, so you don't know where you're going to land, and most of the time it's just like a planet, and planets are different types, and they help you unlock like different various techs that or special abilities, right? But sometimes it's like not a planet, it's a relic, which you cannot land on, right? But as long as your ship is within the orbit of a relic, you can flick that ship again for free. And that's like such a cool thing again, because it's like, hey, I could try and like land at this planet, but if I manage to like park myself with a flick right in front of a relic, I can go further, and that's really nice. And the reason you want to go further, again, a very clever bit of design, is that the map is split into quadrants. Like your quadrant, every planet you occupy at the end of the game is worth a point, which is nice. But every planet you occupy in not your quadrant at the end of the game is 2 points. So there's this like immediate, like, it's probably not very safe to go out further, right? But you want to go out further because there's like more reward out there. So that's also like a neat little moment. And then there are 3 other actions, which are less exciting, but also kind of important. Deploy lets you make more ships or more troopers on planets you already occupy. Interact lets you use special bonus tokens that you get for like landing on planets and stuff like that, which let you do the actions you can already do, but in more efficient and funkier ways. And there's finally build, which is just you build one of something. And there's, like various things like cities increase your defense, or research outposts give you tech, depending on the type of planet you landed. But there's another clever mechanism, which is energy, which is basically like for each energy you spend, you get to do an extra one of that action. So if you're deploying, you get to deploy 1 extra spaceship. If you're moving, you get 1 extra movement. Again, fixing that mistake, that poor flick, right? But also, building cannot be boosted by this. And that's such a clever moment, because building is the one thing that gives you that 4x moment of expanding, right? You're kind of like, getting more things. You can build more spaceships. You can, get new tech or whatever. But you can only do one thing on your turn, whereas all the other actions is like, go everywhere, do everything, have fun, So I like how it restricts that aspect of the game, just to make sure that whatever it is that makes you balloon isn't as exciting as everything else, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so, because otherwise, there were times when we were playing that I thought, I wish I could build more than once. And I was like, I understand why you can't now, because if I could, I would get a real advantage over you. Because once you've built, that planet is occupied by you, and you're controlling that planet, right?
Yeah, until someone parks a whole bunch of spaceships in front of it.
Right, but they have to make more effort then to do that, whereas building is not that difficult to do. Whereas if someone is already there, you have to get rid of them in some way.
Yeah, and it's too easy to like kind of turtle up and make yourself like a kind of little enclave. But also, it makes the rest of it. I'm just saying it's a nice balance, because it makes the rest of it kind of sing. Because building, is one of the ways you get all that fancy new tech, and special abilities. So it just kind of slows that down and curbs it a little bit in a way that makes the rest of the game just as exciting as that portion of the game, and it makes the interactive parts more appealing, right? Because it's like, right, sure, the interactive parts don't necessarily expand you, but they are the fun part, and like you should engage in it.
There's not one action that everyone was waiting to do and building up to do, and then everything else is just faff to get to that one action.
Exactly. So
no, you're right. That's true.
So building is slow, and you only get to do so much of it, but it is still also impactful, and you still want to do it. Which brings me to another point about this game. It's so fast. It is so fast. It just goes dun dun dun. You know, like, oh, I flick once, I flick another time. Oh no, I missed. Oh, my ship is out of bounds. You know, okay,
and
turns
there's the
on.
silliness again.
Yeah. And it just goes bang, 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 bang. You know, like just zips around the table constantly.
Even at 4, you played it at 4?
Yeah, I played it at 4, and it was zippy, zippy, zippy. You know, so that was cool as well. And again, it's just so funny because it is a flicking game. So you have that sort of emotional mentality of this is a stodgy space 4X game where it's just make armies and build and conquer planets, and then I flicked it out of bounds. It's dead. It's so dead. And everyone's laughing, and it kind of breaks up that stodginess, you know. So I really like that. And you know what? The tech is cool. My favorite tech, early tech, because it's like, you know, a tech tree, it's tiered, right? So every planet color is tied to a specific tech tree, and there's different variants as well, because you can play with A sides or B sides. So everyone plays with the same sides, but you can, like, every tech tree can be flipped into A side or B side, and then every tech tree has 2 parts as well. So you can flip one side to B, but the other is still on A, right? So that's kind of neat. But the early tech on purple is I think it's called Gravity Well or something like that.
Sure.
And purple is generally the tech that's associated with flicking, right? And Gravity Well says that if you flick in a way where, like, your spaceship touches a planet, even if it leaves its orbit, you can put it back into its orbit after the flick is done, as long as the ship is still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so everyone in the last game I played, everyone picked it up apart from me. And I said, Gravity Well is for cowards.
And then how did that go for you?
What a bold and stupid claim. Because everyone has saved themselves so many poor flicks, right? Like, because you just miss. You're not used to the game yet, right? So it's kind of like that tech is the game giving you a freebie, going, okay, you know, you landed this shit poorly, right? But it's fine. You can fix it. You know, it's okay. You're not wasting actions, right? Which is nice because it kind of levels the playing field. If someone is feeling bold and brazen and confident, you know, that they can land these flicks, they can go for a different tech, right? But you can also go for this one. So I don't know. It's cool. I think it's nice that there are options like that in the game.
Do you think it would take a few more plays to figure out which tech is good for you as a player? Like, do you think that the way that the tech is set up, like these techs might be really good for me, but less good for you because you're better at flicking or I'm better at flicking? Do you understand what I mean?
I do.
You're more accurate or I'm more accurate. So do you think that there are ways that this game accounts for that kind of thing?
As far as I remember, I can't recall what it is exactly right now, but there are options in the rulebook that also account for that. They're just like flat out options for everyone in the game that kind of levels the playing field in terms of the flicking, right? And I think the game is aware of that and knows that, so it gives you options outside of the scope of, like, you know, oh, here's like a tech you can pick up, and more just like, we're just leveling the playing field for everyone, right?
I said, can I just blow it? Can I go?
And I said no.
No, you said no.
No, we have to flick. But so there's a lot about the game I like, right? And I said that it goes by pretty fast. It's still so long. Like, it's not even that long, but it feels long. There is an element of it where after about an hour and a half.
How was that the length of the game?
I think it was 2 hours.
For 4 players.
Yeah,
okay.
for 4 players. I think it was 2 hours. After about an hour and a half, I was like, I feel like I'm done flicking.
I see.
You know, like, this was fun, but I don't want it anymore.
In the sense of, like, the fun of flicking things had worn off, or your finger was very tired and
No, it's just wore off. It's like, it's like you're watching a film and it should have been like an hour and 40 minutes, but it's 2 hours
right.
10.
That's what I always say. Yeah,
Right.
like, this film could have been half an hour shorter and it wouldn't have suffered at all for it. That's true. So I don't know how you would fix that though. Like,
no, it's just I guess it's the scope of the game, and for me it felt like I still haven't explored enough to have like a real kind of strategic verdict on it. You know,
see.
So and it is compelling. I'm definitely keeping this game. I want to play it more. It's fun. And it's certainly like nothing else I owe in my collection. It's also like over £100 or something like that. It is a massively expensive game, and definitely not something that everyone can afford to own. But it is well produced. It does have a nice rule book that explained the game well. It had, it's not a perfect rule book, but it was a rule book that explained the game to me. And it's fun. It abbreviates on the bits that I want to have abbreviated. So combat, for example, which I know I haven't explained, but it's so simple. It's basically every ship has 1 strength and 1 defense. And then, your planets might have more defense based on the structures that you've built. But so if a ship, basically a ship has 1 attack, 1 defense, right? So first of all, you have to have a ship within range of another ship to attack it. And there's like a little range ruler. And that range is like an inch, maybe, if not less, right? Probably less. Maybe like 1.5 centimeters, something like that, right? So you have to get it pretty close. So you have to flick pretty accurately. So it's like within the nearby vicinity. But it's not enough to have 1 ship next to another ship and attack. There's no dice or anything like that. It happens automatically. As soon as the target you are attacking is suffering more attack than it has defense. So if there's 1 spaceship next to another spaceship, that nothing happens because each of them have 1 attack and 1 defense. But if there are 2 of my spaceships next to one of your spaceships, that's 2 of my attack against your 1 defense, which means I just automatically, at the end of my turn, dispose of it, right? And again, attacking is incentivized because that's the one thing that gives you victory points. The other being building tech. The third thing is completing these randomized missions that you were given, but these don't score you in-game victory points. They score you end-game victory points. And the victory point system is the same as Race for the Galaxy. There's a pool of victory points. As soon as that empties, the game end is triggered. Yeah. Which is less likely to happen in a 4-player game because the pool is quite big and you're more likely to trigger the second end of game condition, which is to have explored and colonized all the planets on the map. As soon as that happens, the game also ends. So either of those can take a while, and it depends on what the people do, but you kind of, you want to make sure that whilst you're moving the clock, you're also moving the clock in a way that is beneficial to you, building up, getting points. And so by the time you kind of navigate towards attacking things and feeling like, oh yeah, I'm brazen enough to kind of go pew pew, right? Half the game's gone by and suddenly like the first victory points only start disappearing from the victory point pool.
I think I did appreciate the way that the combat was boiled down and simplified like that, because quite often in a game like this where there is a lot of combat, there is a lot of added extras to the combat, and you're never quite sure if you're gonna succeed at the combat or not, because you don't know what cards people have up their sleeves or dice people have up their sleeves. And this was very simple. Like I knew whether I could attack you or not.
Well, that's the beauty of it. Like you do, but you also don't, right? You need to flick, right?
Well, I mean, but that's my point. Like, because that is the randomizer. That is the bit that you're unsure of whether you can achieve that part.
And it brings everyone's attention to it, right? It's like everyone's excited and cheering and it's fun at the table, right? Ascending Empires does so many things right. I don't know why it still felt like it outstayed its welcome, you know? Like, I was enjoying every single moment of this game, and then still at the end, I'm like, yeah, I still felt a bit overlong, though. It's weird.
Maybe that's just the experience that you had on that day.
Maybe,
because
yeah.
with the 4-player game.
Mm.
I do appreciate a game that gets everyone cheering for someone else. Like, that's not them. Like, so everyone, when they're playing a game, goes, oh, please let this work out fine. But when everyone else around the table who are competing against them goes, yeah, come on, you can do this. Like, that's kind of magical, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's definitely the sort of thing that makes me excited about playing board games and reaffirms that playing board games is just so much fun. And, you know, even me going, you know, oh, gravity wells for cowards, right? And then every time I missed the flick, the entire table was just like in tatters because...
Who's the coward now?
Yeah, who's the coward now? It was like, I regret every decision I made today.
But it's fun to explore that kind of thing.
I think I'm just being trepidatious about recommending it because it is over like £100.
Yeah.
Right? It is definitely a fun experience. I had a very good time with it. I want to keep playing it. I am not selling my copy, even though it's quite expensive to keep, you know, and it's not a small game either. It's a chunky box. It's not like, you know, Vital Lacerda chunky, but it is chunky, right? But it was just a good time that I am more than happy to return to. It's just a bit dear, and I'm not 100% sold that it doesn't outstay its welcome.
That is the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening. And with that, why don't you say goodbye, Efka?
Goodbye, Efka.
Goodbye, Efka.